Hello and welcome to Guelph GradCast, the only podcast dedicated to bringing you real conversations with real University of Guelph grads. As always, I'm your host Ryan, and I'm still a Guelph grad. Today, I'm joined by Ritika Gupta. Ritika graduated from the University of Guelph in 2020 with a Bachelor of Arts degree majoring in political science and minoring in history. She was a recipient of multiple awards and scholarships, including the Dean Scholarship, which she received 3 years in a row. And if you weren't already impressed, she just finished her final year of law school at Western Law and will soon be articling as a judicial law clerk at the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. Welcome to the podcast, Ritika, and congratulations on finishing law school. I know it's probably a big achievement.
Thank you so much for having me, and it definitely feels good.
We'll get into that. We'll talk a little bit more about law school, but before we do that, I want to just kind of go back a bit and kind of talk about your time at the University of Guelph and kind of how that journey started. We kind of start these podcasts with the same question. It's a simple question, but kind of loaded because it could have a big answer. So why did you choose University of Guelph and why political science?
Sure. I think like so many students in grade 11 and 12, when you start thinking about which university you want to go to and what it is you want to do, I was super confused, and I felt like I was deciding my entire life in that decision, which is, it can't be further from the truth. Really, what you're trying to do is just figure out a next step and know that there are so many places you can go afterwards. I applied very broadly to a lot of different universities in Ontario. I knew I didn't want to go too far from home, and I did a lot of campus tours. I think it happened during March break. So I think I went to like 5 or 6 universities, which I don't think most people do, just to get a sense of what the vibe was like. And my campus tour at the University of Guelph, I think, changed a lot of things for me. I was always interested in the University of Guelph. I knew people spoke very highly of it. But when I went on the campus tour, I noticed how beautiful the campus was. So many trees, beautiful buildings, the arboretum, everything was spread out. Like, it didn't feel very crowded, but at the same time, it still felt very homey and had like a community feel. And then B, I realized how nice everyone was. The campus tour guide was lovely. She was very approachable, and it seemed like all of the students were like genuinely very happy. And one thing that I noticed that I didn't notice at a lot of other universities was that there seemed to be a lot of like casual places where students could gather, and it seemed like students were actually gathered there and just like talking to each other and having like a good social community life. And so that for me made a big difference, because I knew that I didn't want to just be like a number or like one among like thousands of students, but I wanted to have a really strong sense of community at the place where I did my undergrad, especially since it was my first time leaving home and I was admittedly pretty nervous about that. So the campus tour, I think, really made me excited about the prospect of the University of Guelph, and then I did more research into it and went on a second tour. This time I brought my dad, and he loved it too. So I kind of got my parents' approval. And so I think that the decision was kind of made for me after that. It didn't seem like there was anywhere else where I really envisioned myself being after I did the 2 tours. As for why I chose political science, it's a good question. I think this I was more certain of. Growing up, I was always interested in like the news and social and political issues. And so I think political science was a natural path for me. That being said, I was like concerned. I think there was a lot of emphasis on STEM at that time. Everyone was obsessed with STEM, and my family is largely, they have business backgrounds. So I think I was kind of going against the grain a little bit, but I'm so happy that I made that decision, because an undergrad is a long time. It's 4 years, and you're really digging into concepts that are challenging, especially in your last 2 years. And I think if I had chosen anything else, I wouldn't have done as well as I did or really enjoyed as much as I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great to hear. So you had this kind of really, illuminating experience doing the tour, and you felt this sense of community. Did that match your experience once you got in the program and got to campus and started to actually be a part of the community?
Absolutely. And I think the tone was set literally from move-in day. So for context, I lived in, I think it's called South Residence. I'm like totally blanking. South Residence, Mountain Valley, for specifics. And so it was one of the bigger residences, and I had my own room, and I was just concerned in general about like what making friends would be like. First time away from home. I didn't actually know too many people from high school or elementary school who were going to Guelph. But from like the get-go, I think there was this really big emphasis on community building. The individual, I think her name was Lydia, who like oversaw our residence community, was incredible. She organized a lot of events and made sure that we were all like having a good time and getting a chance to get to know each other. And then I slowly started meeting more people in my classes or in the extracurricular community that I surrounded myself with. And I really found like my people. So while I did have people who were friends in residences, I also was able to like branch out and meet a whole lot of people in the greater Guelph community. So I think just a combination of, living on campus, being involved, and meeting people in my classes and going in with the mentality that everyone is a little nervous and everyone is looking to make friends, even if that doesn't seem like the case outside, was really helpful. So overall, the community feeling started in my first year and then only grew until my fourth year. And some of my best friends are still from the University of Guelph. I have a friend who I see pretty often, and she's truly one of my best friends. And I randomly met her in one of my political science classes. We were, I think, poli-sci peers together, helping newer poli-sci students. And then one day I was just like, hey, like if you want to sit together in this class, like let me know, kind of like putting out a feeler to see if she wanted to be friends. And it's truly still one of like my closest friendships and best relationships I have. So yeah, I think the community aspect of the University of Guelph really sets it apart from anywhere else. Not that I have a whole lot to compare to, but
I mean, you
even
did go
when
tours, so
I did five tours, and even when I talk to people who went to the University of Guelph today, they're often like the friendliest people and the most like willing to put themselves out there and make friends. And I think that says a lot about the culture of the university.
do you find you still, like, I know you still have your friends that you met in university. Do you find outside of like post graduation, do you find you still like randomly will meet someone and find out that they went to the University of Guelph or know that you went to the University of Guelph? And what is that conversation like? Is it positive?
For sure. I think it's just such a natural way of creating a relationship. So this past summer, before I finished law school, I worked at a law firm in downtown Toronto. And again, like first day jitters were definitely there. And I met an individual who went to the University of Guelph, and her and I think like bonded immediately over the fact that we went to U of G. And it's kind of like its own internal vetting process where you're like, okay, if someone went to the University of Guelph, they're probably a really cool, really nice person and are like on the same like wavelength and vibe of just being like an overall good person who just wants to be like friendly and like have that genuine connection almost. And so she became one of my best friends at the law firm, and we're still really good friends. Also, when I was going through the recruit during law school to get a job at a firm, one of the partners who interviewed me at one of the firms was from the University of Guelph. And I think we were able to bond over that and talk about that a little bit. And so again, it, I think, takes away some of the nerves when you realize that there's like another person who's had this awesome experience and you can have a connection about it.
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Guelph and I went to school in Guelph, so I've never really experienced much else. But because of that, my perspective of Guelph is I'm always surprised because it's my hometown. It's probably you probably never heard of it. University of Guelph. It's like, oh, actually, I know the University of Guelph. Oh, I worked here. I did this,
sure.
and it is always refreshing and nice to see that and hear that. And you kind of mentioned earlier about like the university having like these really nice areas for socializing. Was there any kind of spots you particularly like always went to, or was it your go-to kind of spot?
Absolutely. I think there were a few. The Bull Ring, of course. So I guess for context, the Bull Ring is one of the many campus eateries, and the University of Guelph, definitely in my time, and I'm sure it's still true, like known for having some of the best food, and I can definitely vouch for that. So the Bull Ring is basically just like this super casual place in the middle of campus with lots of couches, and sometimes there'd be live music, and it's like student run hospitality. So great place to like get a coffee or a sandwich and just like hang out with friends between classes. So I often ended up going there. Creelman's was another great campus eatery. It's absolutely beautiful inside with like floor to ceiling windows. So a really nice place to gather. And then I would often, especially in my latter years, make my way to the Arboretum. So basically where all the trees are,
Mm-hmm.
as the name might suggest, and go for walks with friends between classes as a way to de-stress a little bit and be out in nature. And I like saw a beaver once, which was still just super cool and a highlight. It's really cool to be able to go from a lecture hall and then be straight out in nature and be able to like reconnect with your friends in such a beautiful environment. So I think those would be my top three places.
Yeah, yeah. The university is kind of cool in that way. It's like you said, it's small, but big enough that it has all these different unique kind of places and locations. And so let's dig into a bit more of like kind of the academic side. You're in the political science program, you're minoring in history. How was the program for you? Was there any kind of standout kind of courses or professors or things that kind of you still use in your day to day in terms of what you learned?
That's such a big question, and I just feel like I have so much
Just favorite course. We can narrow it down.
Start with my favorite course. Okay. Again, there's like so many, but I think the first one that I would pick would be there was a course, I think it's just called Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Like I think the course is just called like the Canadian Charter. So that course was all about the charter and about the cases that have come from the charter and how that's intersected with political science. And so cases about like same-sex marriage or assisted dying, like we covered all of those cases and how the charter played like a pivotal role in all of these huge political, social, legal developments that we had as a country. So I just thought that that was like the coolest course in the world. And I think that I was just so naturally interested in what we were learning and so excited about like actually doing the readings and going to the lecture that it was like an early indicator to me that law might be something that I'm interested in. And then I took a number of courses in the law and politics realm. So I took, I think, law, politics, and the judicial process. One of the upper like fourth year seminars that I did was about law and politics. So I think at the University of Guelph, and the way that the political science department is organized is that there's a number of streams or courses and streams that you can start to take to, I wouldn't say like build a specialization, but to really explore something that you might be deeply interested in. Another area that I had some interest in was comparative politics. So I took some courses there. I took a course about civil wars, which was really cool. So yeah, like the academics, I think, were rigorous, and I feel like I really learned how to read complicated texts and parse through them and develop arguments and support them with evidence. So like the really critical skills you need if you're pursuing a career in like the social sciences or law or the humanities. And then paired with that were just like professors who were so deeply passionate. And going back to something that I said earlier, in my undergrad, I didn't want to just like be a number, like one among thousands of students. And I felt that in the political science department in particular, I found professors who I think saw my genuine interest and maybe saw potential in me and then really went out of their way to like mentor me and give me insight in how I could build a career in political science or in law. Some of those profs were like Professor Koning, Professor Spears, the dean of the political science department at that time, Professor Sheldrick. They all, I think, really went above and beyond to help me and to like help me with reference letters or help me decide where to apply to law school. And I'm still in touch with some of them. So overall, like I can't speak higher. I feel like I walked away with like the foundational skills that every student needs. But also it's at the University of Guelph where I became a more confident student and got the confidence to pursue what I've done since then, whether that be spend a few summers in provincial politics or go on to law school and the like.
Mm-hmm. And what was that kind of moment where you're like, yes, I'm going to apply to law school? And what was that process like? Because I think some people, it's a big aspiration for a lot of people, but maybe they don't realize what it takes to kind of actually apply, just the ins and outs of it.
I was just talking to my friend about this. It was kind of a weird time. So for context, I graduated in April 2020.
What happened then? What do you mean?
What was that tiny world event that happened? So it was kind of a weird time. I knew that I was going to be interning at the Ontario legislature for a year after that. So I had basically like a year planned out, but after I had no idea what I wanted to do, I like thought about going into academia, getting like a master's in public policy. And then I guess the pandemic was good for like forced reflection. And I realized that academia probably wasn't for me. I like being more like on the front lines and working with people as opposed to just like pure research and writing. I wasn't super keen on partisan politics for the rest of my life either. And so law school seemed like a natural next step, just given the skills that I developed in my undergrad, and also recognizing I enjoyed law and politics courses so much. So I feel like I kind of applied on a whim, not sure if I would get in anywhere. I wrote the LSAT, which was a whole process, and then submitted my applications and was lucky to get in. So not a decision that I thought a whole lot about, like I really poured over, especially as someone who overthinks everything. This was maybe like the one thing in my life I didn't super overthink. But I also feel like I had the confidence to go for it, just given that I knew I was interested in law and politics and that my skill set would serve me for an education in the law and hopefully a successful career in it. And also I had professors who had law degrees, Professor Sheldrick, Professor Baker. They all had that law background, which they brought to their courses in political science. And it was their courses that I like really, truly enjoyed so much. And so, yeah, I had, I guess, a good idea that it would be something that I would enjoy, but I'm still very much figuring it all out in real time.
I think we all are.
For sure.
But then once you kind of got into law school and you're kind of going through it, did you find that you felt like well prepared from your undergrad? Like, did you feel like there was anything you were lacking, or, did you feel like you were well prepared?
It's a good question. If I'm being honest, I don't think anything can truly prepare you for how intense, especially your first year of law school is. Just like the volume of material that you're learning and how new all of the concepts are. That being said, I felt not that I like had any sort of background per se, but I felt like I was confident that I had the skills needed to like actually make it through and take away what I was supposed to. And I know that sounds kind of abstract, but I knew that I would be able to like read very complicated and dense cases because that's something that I had exposure to through political science and then through my history minor, like reading primary source documents and really poring over that. Like I knew that I had the ability to do that, even though it was still very challenging. I knew I had the ability to write succinctly and convey a point clearly. Again, that came from years of political science, writing essays, and then seeing how far I had come from my first year essays to my fourth year essays. And I knew that, or I guess I was like empowered a lot in my courses to use my voice and to like share my ideas, especially in like the smaller seminar courses that I did in my political science degree. And then that was very important in law school too, especially I think a lot of law schools, especially including Western, have like a small group setting. So that's like 20 students who you have all your classes with, and then one of your courses is only 20 students. And so there you're kind of expected to participate more, and it's a bigger part of your mark. And you also have to do a moot, which is like I guess like kind of like a mock trial, but not really, like debate essentially. And so I feel like those skills I really developed at the University of Guelph in my undergrad. So I knew that I would be okay in law school and I'd be able to figure it out. And then I, again, took courses like the Canadian Charter and law, politics, and the judicial process. And so going into law school, I already had some understanding of like legal concepts like the Oakes test, which is a legal doctrine that's applied in all charter cases and central to constitutional law. So I think knowing that I had like a solid understanding of how government works and how some of these concepts work gave me a lot of confidence going into law school and like reassurance that I would be okay and I'd figure it out.
And I think maybe I have an idea based on what you've been talking, but do you know what kind of law you want to get into?
It's a really good question. Again, something I think I'm figuring out in real time. One of the first decisions that law students have to make is if they're more interested in litigation or transactional work. So transactional work, I would kind of broadly categorize as everything that comes before some sort of legal relationship is created or like a contract is formed. So it might be like negotiating a contract or like helping to negotiate a merger of two companies or like creating like a marriage agreement, something like that. And then litigation is kind of like when a conflict or a legal issue arises between two or more parties, the fallout that happens, and oftentimes it's litigators who are in court advocating for a client. So I was lucky to work at a firm in my second year of law school and have exposure to both areas. And I realized that litigation was definitely the area I'm more interested in. I was able to go into court one day in the summer and see these phenomenal lawyers argue before a judge. And it was just like the coolest experience. And I felt like I was floating afterwards because it like kind of clicked for me that that's what I wanted to do. So I'm definitely more interested on the litigation side. What area of law in particular I want to specialize in is still up in the air. I'm trying to figure it out and hopefully get experience in a lot of different areas. And then maybe I will be more confident in pursuing one area in particular. That being said, I think political science and like constitutional law and public law were my first loves and what I really discovered at the University of Guelph. And so I would love for that to be at least a part of my practice, if not my whole practice.
I was going to say constitutional law. That was my guess, just based on your enthusiasm.
For sure.
And so like taking it back to the University of Guelph, you know, you've been away now, I guess, for about like 5 years. I imagine you still think about it. Is there anything you still like kind of miss the most, or you still kind of catch yourself like, you know, I missed this spot or I missed this experience?
Gosh, I think just being on campus and especially having my experience come to such an abrupt end in March 2020, I didn't really get a chance to like say goodbye to my friends or walk across the stage for convocation or like my last time going to the library or the UCC or whatnot. So I think just in general, just like being there, it was such a special time in my life and like very much like the stereotypical experience of like going to university and having your mind open to so many different ideas and meeting so many different people who are all trying to figure out what it is they wanted to do and what they want their life to look like. It was truly such a special experience. And sometimes I'm afraid that I like look at my experience at U of G with rose-tinted glasses, but then I'll talk to another Guelph alum who had the same experience and they'll be like, oh no, it actually was a really special time. And at a time where I just was like so happy and learning so much. So in general, I think I would just like love to go back and visit some of the places that I had such special memories in because I was truly so happy and learning so much about myself and what it is I wanted to do afterwards. I don't know if that's kind of a cop-out, but that's truly how I'm feeling.
No, that's fair. So you haven't actually been back since you graduated?
No, I haven't been back since I graduated. I should have gone back for homecoming, maybe I guess that happens in September. Maybe I'll go to the game or a Frosty mug or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I haven't had the chance to go back and I really would like to.
Well, you should. Well, I know you're a busy person, so I don't want to keep you too long. Is there anything else we didn't talk about that you really feel like you want to get out there, you want to say?
Maybe I guess if I were to like place myself in the shoes of the incoming students who might be listening to this podcast, just know that I was like deeply anxious about university in my first year, which I think is totally normal. All of my friends that I've spoken to were also feeling the same way. And I was so scared about making the wrong decision because it felt like deciding what university I'd go to and what program I would go into was like the biggest decision in my whole life. And that's just like not true, which I can say now that I'm about 9 years out of it. It's just one step that you're deciding. And if you decide that the decision you made isn't right for you, there are thousands of opportunities to pivot and try something else. Yeah, unsolicited advice, do the campus tours, be like me, do the 6 tours or something maybe more manageable, get a sense of like the vibe, and then make your decision based on your gut and where you think you'll be happiest, not what is the most like prestigious or what other people are telling you to do. And I truly think that if you make the decision based on where you feel happiest and most at ease, you really can't go wrong.
No, I totally agree with that. I think sometimes you're right. You can get caught up in wanting to figure it all out at once. But like you said, you can always pivot. And even if you do pivot, what you did beforehand isn't a waste. You still can use that.
Totally.
It's still a part of that whole journey. Well, thank you, Ritika. I
Of
really
course.
appreciate you taking the time to come chat with us today. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to wherever you get your podcast. Maybe if you got time, drop us a review, hopefully positive. For the latest updates, you can be sure to follow us on all our socials. And for more info, you can visit uofguelph.ca. All the links will be in our show notes. Our show's theme is actually by another Guelph grad, Paige Rutledge, and we'll be back soon with another Guelph grad. Till next time, thank you so much for listening.